So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, Adapting Early Childhood Locations or Environments for Children with FASD with Lily Patzer. I am speaking to you from Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis people. I am Marlene Dre, and I am the FASD Prevention Program Coordinator at the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute. At the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute, our goal is healthy children. We believe that children of all abilities have the right to the best physical, social, and emotional health possible. And in the FASD Prevention Program, we work not only in understanding and preventing alcohol-exposed pregnancies, but also in preventing the adverse impacts of FASD. And these can happen when a child with FASD is not understood, perhaps doesn't have a diagnosis, and this child is not supported in the way that can be best for him or her. So today's presentation is part of the FASD program's work in early childhood and as part of the early childhood team, which is kind of the ages from 0 to 6. And this team involves parenting programs, injury prevention, early childhood mental health, and the community action program for children, as well as the research and evaluation, because we always make sure that everything we share with you is evidence-based and researched. I am thinking it's probably easier if you can keep your video and microphones turned off, and then we can concentrate on Lily. And as I've mentioned to many of you, this is being recorded, so you will be here for posterity if your video happens to make it to the screen. Please place any questions that you have in the chat box, and also please feel please feel welcome to introduce yourselves in the chat box too, because it's really nice to give us that opportunity to get to know each other. It's over 65 people taking part in this webinar. And I will also be sending a webinar after the evaluation, I will sending an evaluation after the webinar, because this helps us in the planning that we do and to think about what sorts of information and training we can bring to you. And this might also include me very nicely at some point asking Lily if she could come back and maybe expand on some of the topics that she'll be starting to introduce to us today. But we'll talk more, Lily, right?
Yes.
So Lily Patzer comes from a mixed Aboriginal and European background. She uses her Indigenous knowledge gained from her grandmother and from the elders in her life to promote culture and community. She's a mother, grandmother, teacher, early childhood educator, and the provincial program manager of the Aboriginal Head Start Association of BC. She's been in the educational field for 35 years, 10 years as a teacher, and 25 in Aboriginal Head Start. Her passion is promoting leadership and high quality early childhood programs. Many of you know Lily from her time here, and I am just so excited to have her with us today. And I will not say any more. I'm turning this over to Lily.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to get my screen ready. Okay, home. Anyways, good morning, everyone. It's 11:30 here, but good afternoon to you. I'm really glad to be here. I'm coming to you from the unceded traditional territory of the Okanagan people in Oliver, British Columbia. If you'd like, please put the territory that you're on in the chat box. That would be nice and lovely for me to see which area you're from. Yes, so I work with 24 Aboriginal Head Start programs in British Columbia. 12 are preschools, and 12 are Aboriginal Head Start childcare centers, and I support them and really try to bring that high quality programming to all our different First Nations out here in British Columbia. So today I'm going to be talking to you about FASD and how we can create these beautiful opportunities for children so that they too can succeed. And many of these strategies everybody benefits from truly. So this is going to be a conversation, I hope. So if you have any questions, please speak it out. If you're shy like me, you can always put it in the chat box, and Marlene's going to be monitoring that, and we'll just keep going. It's lovely to see some of your names. I wish I could see the beautiful faces of my colleagues in Saskatchewan, but it's just lovely to see your names too. So just some background information. FASD is a neurodevelopmental disorder with neurobehavioral symptoms. It's a brain-based condition. It cannot be cured, but it is not genetic. It only occurs when there is alcohol exposure while the female is pregnant. And the other thing about FASD is we used to say it's 100% preventable, but we know it's not. It's a social condition. So if you're in a family where there's drinking and, you know, drinking is acceptable in our society, it's really unfair to ask women to stop if they're not being supported by partners or community. So I used to think, oh my goodness, it's got to be 100% preventable, but truly it's not. So it's really a social issue, and that we have to deal with it that way. And when we have a child who's exposed and comes to our program, we have to offer that love and that connection. And we as early childhood educators have the opportunity to make a difference for this child. And these are just such lovely children. And if we can promote the high quality and the interactions and that support, then we have the opportunity to create success and positive outcomes for a child that is affected by FASD. So, and again, I'm going to provide this PowerPoint to Marlene, who can share this with you. So some of this stuff I'm going to go through quickly, just to say that FASD causes lifelong effects, both physically, behaviorally, intellectually, and creates secondary issues for the child, who then has to be in society and have difficulties in school or social skills or with the criminal justice system, substance abuse, and so forth. But again, FASD does not have an FASD diagnosis does not have to be a sad story. It could be, and we have the opportunity to make it into a good news story with positive outcomes. So Diane Melvin, a great researcher in FASD, says that really the brain affected by FASD, it's like using a roadmap. So there's the brain wiring all in your brain, but it's wiring for a different space. So it's like trying to get trying to get around in Toronto, but using a map for Vancouver. So there's ways to do things, but it's just done differently. So again, everything I say in early childhood, and if any of you have ever heard me speak or interact with your programs, I always talk about how it's really the relationships. And I came to this because when play and exploration came about, and it was all new to all of us when it was presented in Saskatchewan, it was about environment, experiences, and relationships. So of course, environment, my favorite, love creating those beautiful, inspiring, community-based environments. And then after a while, my brain exploded, and it's like, it's not just the environments, because you can have the most beautiful environments in the world, but if you don't have that love and interaction, then really it's not worth it. You need that interaction. You need those early childhood opportunities that we provide children to have connections with caring adults who are responsive for a child's needs, who are going to listen, watch their physical and facial cues, and really respond to where their brain is at. So a child who has FASD, our interactions are very important, because if we come to from a place of love and acceptance and really responsiveness, then we can minimize the adverse impacts of FASD. So it is incumbent on us to inspire and create opportunities with for children with FASD to experience success, to experience understanding, to experience connection. So ultimately, we can minimize the impact of the trauma that is FASD. So again, it's all about the relationships. So if you agree with that, give us a thumbs up from your reaction, just so I can see how we're doing. So children with FASD learn, they just learn in different ways. And so these methods are also the way children without FASD also learn. So using visual cues and positive prompts support their learning. So using fidget toys or weighted blankets when they're in circle time so that they have something to do. And we all know that when you are learning something, if you have movement, that's how you're going to learn. So the expectation that we used to have that children sit still is just not an expectation for any child, let alone a child affected by FASD. And then those of you who use weighted blankets, really make sure that there's the occupational health person is the one that supports that. We do not have the skills as ECEs to like know what weight and what kind of vest a child would need based on their weight and stuff. So we know children with FASD have a real, don't have that sense of their place in that environment. So sometimes a weighted blanket might be something that is prescribed, but really it shouldn't be us prescribing it. It should be a professional so that we don't harm the child in any way. And then also using things like social stories and then that coaching to support the child in this environment. And so that that child feels like they're part of this environment, they're accepted, and they're not different from any other child. So FASD, a child with FASD learn, but in a different way. And it's still a good way to interact with all children. So we know that children coping with stress, there's a fight, flight, freeze, faint, and tend and defend mode. And of course, anytime a child feels loss of control or loss of power, they're going to go to that monkey part of their brain, the middle brain, and react in these different ways. So really, as educators, we have to also understand the child's brain, and that when a child is stressed or not being interacted with or not being feeling not being cared about or ignored, they are going to go into these reactions. So most of you probably familiar with fight, flight, and freeze. And now there's two more that are added to this way that we react to stress. And it's not just a child with FASD, it's all children. And so really understanding the child's brain, understanding your child, again, about relationships and connections. So, you know, a child's brain, there's the reptilian brain, the most basic part of our brain. Then there's the emotional brain, the middle brain, and then there's the executive functioning new brain. So for children, all children, we have to understand all these parts of the brain and know that when one component of the brain is sleeping or taken care of, then a child can really begin to do those things we want them to do in early childhood education programs, you know, doing the puzzles or painting or playing at dress up and so forth. But truly, until we understand the middle brain and the reptilian brain and respond to that brain, then the executive functioning is not going to happen. So a child who has FASD, if they're ignored or they're behaving and having those challenging behaviors and we're not responding to it because sometimes we think, oh, they're just being bad or stuff like that. I do hear when I'm out in the field. But children at this age that we're working with do not have the motivation to be bad or to be challenging. They're not doing that to aggravate us or to stress us out. Their behavior is telling us something, and we as relationship builders have to figure that out and support that child. So again, knowing the child and knowing where they're at is going to really help us respond and create those opportunities for these children to succeed. Oh, previous. So the executive functioning, the critical thinking, the sequencing, the patterning, all these things are part of the new brain. And so a child with FASD has all these things within their brain. It's just not, you know, patterned out properly. Like, for example, in our brain, there's the self-control, there's the memory, there's the critical thinking. Child with FASD has these, but not itemized this way. So everything's more cluttered around. So a child has the opportunity to learn, make those brain connections, just takes longer, and it just takes different ways of doing and more support from the educators or other adults, caring adults in their environment. So we know that children with FASD, they're defined as a 10-second child in a 1-second world. So some of you who might be moms out there, I'm a mom, so sometimes I'll ask my child to do the dishes and I expect like right now. And so over time, you know that teenagers like take their time and they're poking along, and just understanding that sometimes children need time to process what we're asking before they do that ask. And so children with FASD, they really need that time. They have to like give them that instruction, be very clear, make sure they're not distracted by anything else around them, have that eye-to-eye contact, check that child for understanding, or ask them to show you what you've asked. Break down the steps and provide one step at a time, and allow for that understanding. So understanding, we have a 10-second child in a 1-second world. And if any of you know me, I'm a 1-second kind of girl. So sometimes teenagers might frustrate me, but I do take this to heart when I'm dealing with young children in our early learning programs. And in fact, all children, they do need that time to process. Any comments so far? No? Okay. So then
it's been pretty quiet in the comment box.
Okay, it's really hard to do a webinar when there's no conversation. I feel like I'm talking to myself because I don't see anybody either. So in the FASD field, we follow the ALARM acronym, which is attention, language, adaptive behavior, reasoning, and memory. So we're going to talk through this. So attention, we know that children with FASD have difficulty concentrating, they're impulsive, and they have difficulties sitting still. So these children move around a lot, very impulsive, really need us to help regulate them and help support them in that way and provide those choices that are going to be inspiring to them and help them deal with that opportunity to do a task and focus and concentrate. So again, it's up to us to create that environment. And you know, COVID has provided us the opportunity to create those more quieter environments, more personal environments, more bubbled environments, so the child has the opportunity to have that more of a focus. So there's just some things that COVID has provided that we can facilitate in our programs. So a child difficult concentrating, a quieter, peaceful area to work, lower lights, an attentive adult is going to support that child gaining some attention and or staying on task and some concentration skills. Children with FASD have a lot of expressive language. They can talk a blue streak. They're always agreeing. Yes, I understand. Yes, yes. They can repeat back to you, but they don't always have the comprehension. They just appear like they do, but they don't might not understand, like you might say the rule, they might be able to repeat that rule, but not understand that rule or be able to apply it to different things. So maybe a rule is not running in the childcare center, or in the classroom. So maybe they'll run through the hallway. Whereas other children might understand that running indoors is just not acceptable in this space. Children with FASD use expressive language, but their understanding of that language is below their peers. And so sometimes they do appear like they're very verbal, but again, the comprehension is not always there. And truly, this is also, other children also face that. It's not just children with FASD. So making sure that we're clear, us educators like to talk lots. So really minimizing your instructions, one instruction at a time, be clear, be consistent, and life will become easier. But I know what us educators do. Okay, children, put away your toys, come sit in circle, make sure you tuck your chair in and let's go. And now like we have children like going, what's happening here? So really breaking down in steps helps support all their children and all the children meeting the goals that the educator has and what they want to do next.
So I'm just going to jump in. There have been a couple of comments that have come through, Lily.
Okay.
One of them is, how would you talk to a parent who might be in denial in accepting this for the child?
Okay, so as an early childhood educator, I do not have the skills or the knowledge or the capacity to be able to say this child has FASD or this child, like you can, sometimes you can suspect, but we don't have those skills. So for me to talk to a parent that their child might need some support, I always go back to using in our programs and getting permission from the parents about doing the ages and stages questionnaire. And when we do the ages and stages questionnaire, when you've done that, you can see where the child, and you can do this with the parent, for sure you want to do it with the parent. You can see where the child has some challenges and some areas that need to be improved upon, that need to be supported. So that would be my way of saying to a parent, here's where your child's at in the ASQ. This is what I'm going to do in my program to support your child's learning under communication, fine motor, large motor, and the other two. And then I would also say, okay, mom, dad, auntie, this is some stuff you can do. Here's how I can support you doing this at home so that we can provide the best programming for our children. So that's the way I would go for it. What do you think, Marlene? Is that?
I think that's very wise because, as you say, it's not necessarily up to us to be saying, I think your child has. I think part of it too is because there's all of that stigma and judgment that can go around the whole topic of substance use in pregnancy, and people may not be quite willing, to confirm that. Like, it's a really difficult topic. But yes, approaching it from taking a look at the ages and stages as you suggested, and it can maybe start to have the conversations, and maybe eventually the child may be sent for a diagnosis. As a bit of an aside, and this comes from an earlier webinar we did, it's looking like there could be some work being done in the province where they could look at diagnosing children under the age of 6. It's exciting, it's in the initial stages, but it's something that may be happening over the next while, and that may make it a little easier for some of these conversations, or at least moving some children through diagnosis.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I was just going to say, there was another comment here. I found having consistent structure and routine works well for children with FASD.
Yeah, and that works for all children. Like, that's just like, that is the go-to. That structure, that routine, all children thrive, all of us as human beings thrive with routine and structure. And so the other thing I wanted to say, to go back to the previous comment, really everything we do in early childhood is about relationships. So as ECEs, we need to cultivate relationships with the parents, with the caregivers of these children, so that when it's time to have these conversations that might not be, it's pretty hard to say to a parent, we've noticed that your child needs support in this, because parents, we are sometimes in denial, and our society guilts us. We have to be the best of everything, and we feel that stigma when our child isn't as he's supposed to be. So you have to cultivate that relationship with the parents so that we're all on the same page and supporting what's best for the child. So if you don't have a relationship with the parents, and now you're going to say, please come in, let's do an ASQ, and the parent might be devastated with maybe the results. Maybe they expected so much more from their child, or they might think their child failed. So if you don't have the relationship to talk with the parent and really support them, it's going to be really traumatic for everyone involved. So even if you're going to do an ASQ and get parent permission, really have that relationship cultivated first with the parents, truly. Okay, can we proceed then? Are we good?
I think we're good, because the follow-up comment had just been not diagnosing, but beginning to talk about it if parents are not aware.
Yeah.
So I think you've touched that.
Okay. So for language, when we're speaking to children with FASD, we might be saying, please put your shoes and coats on, but they only hear some of that word. So we might say, stop running in the daycare, but they hear stop the. So they don't always fully comprehend, and their brain doesn't fully take in what's being said. So they might sometimes might seem like they're not listening, or they're being contrary, but really it's just the way their brains are made up and how they're making those connections. So having that compassion and understanding, and as an educator, not be upset by some of this, because this is their brain and not oppositional behavior. So children's adaptive behavior really fall a little bit below their peers, and sometimes, they do have struggles with some independent skills, making friends, taking care of themselves. And it's not because they do that purposefully, just that they just sometimes forget, or maybe they're not reminded. And so children with FASD do need lots of reminders, visual cues to remember things, and they just need us to support that. And so we need to change up our practices to support those kinds of skills being developed. So if we want children to wash their hands, and having the sign with the hand washing and all those kinds of things that we can place in our environment, the signage stuff to help them, as well as the verbal reminders. When they're playing, just having those clocks that, forget what those clocks are, where it shows the red, and then as time's almost over, it's little by little. So visually they can see it's almost time to do something else, and those kinds of warnings really help support these children. And then with the personal skills, like when they're playing with water center, and maybe they're going to wash the babies, and as you're observing them and playing with them, talking about washing your hair and washing your hands and washing your toes, and so just being there to support that kind of learning is just really key to helping our children adapt their behaviors, so that they do begin to cultivate friendships and some of these independent living skills, and we can provide that within our programs. So children with FASD have some difficulties prioritizing and meeting goals, understanding the safety and risky behavior, and understanding how actions and outcomes are connected. So there is some executive functioning that is not always connecting properly or connecting the way it needs to be. So we have to support them in that. So for example, when you have your program and you're dealing with your preschoolers and they're in circle and you have the pictures of the children and asking them what opportunities and what play they want to do today. So maybe little Kezia says she wants to play at the dress up today. So put that down, and then just as a reminder during the day, like, hey, Kezia, I've noticed you're not playing here. You said that you wanted to do this. Like, how can I support you in doing that? So being that memory for them and that reminder to support their understanding and their activity. And then the understanding of actions and outcomes. You know, when you do this, this is going to happen. So having some of those cause and effect and those different games or puzzles you can do that show that would help that. And then mitigating risky behavior. So I'm all for outdoor play in beautiful settings where there's some risk involved. So starting with small risks and showing the children and giving them opportunities to navigate their environment with little bits of risky play. And then, you know, talking about that safety and why we don't do some of this stuff. Like if a child wants to climb on top of your desk and jump, well, we don't want to do that because you'll get hurt. But if you go outside and you climb on the log and the log is 1 foot off the ground and you jump, then, you know, that's risky behavior, but it's developmentally appropriate. So providing those opportunities for some risk taking that is developmentally appropriate so they begin to understand and navigate their environment. And children with FASD have inconsistent memory. They don't always learn from past experiences because they don't always have the capacity to transfer knowledge. So if you're going outside and there's ice everywhere and you wear your rubber boots and you fall, next time you're not going to wear your rubber boots. You might wear your Sorels. Whereas a child with FASD might forget that he fell yesterday wearing his rubber boots. So today he's going to wear his rubber boots and go on the ice and fall. But, well, I fell yesterday, but it was on the driveway, not on the ice rink. So sometimes those associations aren't happening. And therefore, we as educators have to be there to support that and help them develop that understanding. And this one's a big one because truly that information processing and integration is not always happening. So some of these memory challenges really challenge us educators to continue to be that supportive, compassionate educator. Because sometimes you just like, we do so much in the field that sometimes we do get frustrated with some of these things. Like I just told him yesterday and the day before and the day before. So really just having that compassion and understanding and know that this child is displaying this behavior, not out of a place of wanting your attention or just being difficult, but really it's their brain and how their brain is processing that information. So as educators, really creating those opportunities to show that child that you're there to support them and, you know, giving them the opportunity to develop trust and know that you are going to be a consistent, caring adult in that environment for that child. Because imagine a child with FASD may frustrate many adults, and maybe, you know, family at home or other people are not going to have that compassion and understanding of this information that I'm providing. And maybe they're going to be inconsistent in their interactions with this child. But, you know, we are the professionals and we understand the child's brain, and we also understand that a caring, consistent, solid adult in the early years can make a difference for that child for the next 80 years. So then challenges with information processing. So these children with FASD have expressive verbal skills, but maybe not the understanding and the comprehension. They miss instructions in body movements, so not always reading the cues of a someone's physical actions, and then have trouble instructions. So a child with FASD sometimes gets themselves in harmful situations because they might say they walk into a room and there's an angry adult with their arms crossed and their face looking mad, and a child with FASD might not interpret that. Like, so a child without FASD might see this and go, oh, I'm not going near that person, like they're mad. Whereas someone with FASD might not interpret that, and that might get them into harmful situations. So I think the emotional literacy and having those discussions and posters and books around to talk about the emotions and what people look like, and having mirrors for the child to see what it looks like to be mad and happy and sad. I think those are really, really important, because we want our children to be safe. And we also know in our society, children with any kind of disorder or disability are the children that are going to be victimized the most. So we want to give these children, all children, the tools to be able to process information that's around their environment, the environment, as well as the body language and cues of others. So another opportunity here for your environment is really adapting your environment, because sometimes the sensory environment is a bit too much. For example, we learned long ago that these overhead lights, the fluorescent lights, make those noises that children can hear and that can be really bothersome. If there's a loud noise, kids jump a mile. The tags in your shirts at the back, the seams in your socks, little things can annoy and really distract a child with FASD. They don't, some food, they might like French fries, but not mashed potatoes. They might like ketchup and those kinds of things. So really being responsive to those children and providing support in that way. And children with FASD don't always have the feeling of their space in that environment. So they do appear clumsy. I don't like to use that word clumsy, but they do appear like they're wishy-washy around their movement. But again, it's because they're not aware of their body in space. So how do we support these children? And, you know, bright lights and loud noises bother many children, bother adults as well. So, you know, Play and Exploration says use lighter, calmer lights, bringing lamps, make your environment home-like, and minimize the noises and distractions, because those things, when you have the bright lights and these loud noises, they distract children. And really, we want children to have the ability to play and stay focused on task. So these are some things that are easily fixable in your environment when you're interacting with young children. And then the motor skills, sometimes the poor coordination, the fine motor impairment, and poor visual impairment. So how do we support children with poor coordination? Provide different opportunities to use their body, maybe different obstacle courses and different opportunities so they can have these skills and practice. And they're going to need more practice than an average child. I don't know if I should even use the word average child, but than a child without FASD. So we know that when children are learning a new skill, it's like you've all seen that image. It's like walking through the forest and there's bumpy roads and there's rocks in the way and twigs in the way. But as a child gains more and more practice, their brain's making those more and more connections, then those skills are going to become easier to use. And then you see the visual of a highway. So now they can just do something so quickly, so easily. So children with FASD, we might have to offer more opportunities. So maybe I'm having, while other children are doing play, maybe having the opportunity to practice some of these skills and offer that support to a child that has FASD, so they too can also experience success. And the more we offer opportunities to practice and experience success, then we're going to have a child who feels supported, who's going to be able to make friends because now they're feeling successful. So if a child is not feeling success, they're feeling that they're not like the others and all that kind of stuff, that's going to inhibit their opportunity to make friends and feel positive about who they are. So, and children with FASD are so kind and sweet, and they want to be loved and they want to make friends. And if we don't provide these opportunities for them, then what's happening is we might be creating opportunity. We're creating an environment that they would be, mistreated or ignored or not be able to come into a group because, well, they're different or however other children interpret that. So the more we provide these opportunities for children with FASD to develop their coordination, their eye-hand coordination, their physical skills, then the more opportunities they're going to have to be successful in that social environment that we provide. And so it's up to us as caring educators to get to know the child, get to know some of the characteristics of children with FASD, and really respond to that child's needs and get to know that child and provide those experiences. And really, we have to be that caring, supporting, loving adult. And when we do that, we know we can change the outcomes for children. Early childhood experiences are the most important experiences to affect a child for the rest of their lives. So we can provide experiences based on love and support and create a brain built towards love, or we can provide an environment that I'm too busy, I can't do this, what else do you want me to do? I'm planning for 6 other children, and create that environment where a child's not going to succeed. The importance of early childhood cannot be overstressed. And this is the opportunity that we have and that I truly embrace as an early childhood educator, the ability that we have to create these beautiful experiences and relationships with children that's going to create those positive outcomes. And so this is what we need to do. I don't even think it's a choice. So when I see educators who are like, embrace the child and create those beautiful spaces, then I'm just so happy. And then when I see adults, saying, well, we got to clean for COVID and we got to do this, and parents are coming at me, then I sometimes think, well, maybe you might not be in the right field for you, because our support is for those children first, creating that safe, beautiful space for the child. And so the secondary characteristics of FASD for children are they do have less friends, more isolated, they've experienced trauma. And so when children come to us with trauma, there's all kinds of challenging behavior. And that's why we have to create those places of love and support for them, for the child, as well as for the family. The child cannot be separated out from their family. And again, the other characteristic is unevenly. Sometimes they're going to do well at an experience and sometimes not well, and sometimes yes and sometimes no. And for us not to be frustrated with that, because that is part of their the way their brain operates. Any comments?
There have been some great comments coming through in the chat. I've been enjoying reading them. We've been paying close attention and making little changes in our classroom, and we are pleased that it is working. No diagnosed children in our class, but the changes have been helpful overall. And it takes a community to raise a child, and a great deal of good information.
Thank you. You know, I'll tell you a story. In New Zealand, when the child goes to kindergarten on the first day, that child is allowed to bring whoever he wants to with him. So you have a little guy, he's 4 years old, he's going to go to kindergarten, and he might have 20 people coming with him. His grandparents, the elders in the community, his mom and dad and brothers and sisters and best friend and the baby that was just born in their family. And that family, that group that surrounds this child is allowed to stay in that space until the child is comfortable. Is that not just the most beautiful thing you've ever heard? Truly, it takes the community.
That is beautiful.
And so us as early childhood educators, we're that child's community. And we have to take our role very seriously. And we have to have that passion for supporting children, all children, but truly understanding that our support is going to make a difference. So when we see children with FASD as non-compliant, they're not cooperative, they're not listening, they're being manipulating, they're trying to make us upset, that is not the case. So understanding that that is the wrong narrative to use, because these children want to please. They want to be loved. They want to be embraced. They want to understand. It's their brain that's not connecting and wiring properly. And so the more we create that opportunity for them to cooperate with us, to give them less instructions at a time, understand that when they're sad or upset, it comes from their emotional stuff, not from, oh, I'm going to make the teacher do it my way or what have you. It's not that at all. And so I think this non-compliant, uncooperative, resistant, manipulative, unmotivated, like take a picture of that and make sure you understand that this is not happening. Take a picture and write across it, not happening. So we know that children with FASD, they want to be helpful, they're friendly and affectionate, energetic, they're good with animals, they like to do hands-on stuff, they're talkative. So if we want to support children in our early years programs with these strengths, then maybe they can become the teacher's little helper. Maybe they're the child that then I can say, okay, little one, can you take this to the kitchen? Give them those opportunities to experience connection as well as success and make them feel good about doing something. Maybe you have a little rabbit in your classroom and they can help feed that animal or pet it and be there to talk to that animal. So just giving them those feel success based on their strength. So that's what we want to do as early childhood educators. And it's not what we want for all children anyways. So as I was preparing this PowerPoint, I was just thinking, like, this is what we do for all kids. Like, this is what I do for my children, even at home as a mom, wanting our children to feel that success and that connection. So again, children with FASD are really good at hands-on stuff. They're curious, they're artistic and musical. So create that space for them to be artistic and express themselves. Have that creative center where they can do their painting and their artwork and frame it and display it beautifully and really honor what they're doing so that they feel that success. And so children who have a brain-based disability, sometimes they're not feeling successful. They're aware that they're different from their peers and they're in trouble more and they hurt themselves more. So when we give them opportunities to be artistic and expressive and be able to create these beautiful masterpieces, then that's building them up. And then we take that artwork and we frame it and we honor them, then we are providing that feeling of self-esteem that comes from within, as opposed to me coming by saying, oh, nice artwork, and I keep on going. So giving them these opportunities. And if they want to do that for a long period of time, ensuring that you provide time for that. So you got to give them space. So we can't always be the educator that rushes through, blah, blah, let's do this, do this, do this. This is what I want to do this, this, and that. Giving those children the time they need to get this done.
I'm just going to let you know that there are 8 minutes left.
Oh my goodness. So I'll talk really, really quick. So we want to build relationships and connections, knowing what the child enjoys, what their best qualities are, and then following that lead. Individualize your approach, separate the person from the behavior. I'm going to go down to here. Okay, so adapting your environment, provide an environment that is calm, orderly, and organized. Define and organize the space, and minimize auditory and visual distractions. So really calm the environment down, have beautiful pictures, but not tons. Like if you see the bulletin board behind me, if you see that in my picture here when I'm talking, do not do crazy bulletin boards like the one behind me. So we want to create a space that is visually pleasing and calm, with low light, low, not too much loud noises. So if you have a quiet area, make sure it's moved away from the block and the vehicle and the dinosaur play area. Have those smaller group sizes of interactions. Reduce waiting time. So don't have 10 kids waiting to brush their teeth. Call one at a time so that we reduce those distractions and those long waits that, you know, kids are going to display challenging behavior when they're standing and they're getting bored and they're getting hot and what have you. And then reducing, I talked about reducing those visual stimulation, but most of all, increase educator interaction. Be that responsive adult to that child. Create structure and routine so there's safety and security in that predictability. Develop that consistent routine and transitions, and provide the visual picture. So a child, you know, this is for home. Sleeping, you wake up, get up, eat breakfast, brush your teeth. In your program, come in, circle, breakfast, brush teeth, play. And being able to use that routine to show that child. Recognize what might be triggering to that child, be able to read their body language. Provide a space for self-regulation. You guys know I always like to have a teepee in the space where a child can go to get away from it all. Have a space so that if you don't have a place for a child to get away from it all, you're going to, as an educator, one day you're going to lose it and say, time out. We don't want to do time out. Time out says you don't belong in our community. Please provide that space. If you don't have a teepee, create a space under a desk with beautiful lights and a pillow, and provide that, please. Provide fidget toys for circle time, whether it's like a sensory bottle or what have you, so that child is moving, and that's for all children. And then again, if you need to work with an occupational therapist around weighted blankets and so forth. So communication, again, is key, concrete, precise, one instruction at a time. Use the child's name so they know that you're talking to them, and limit the distractions. Make your expectations simple, clear, and easy. Short-term consequence to specific behavior, and natural consequences are not always effective. So we got to really, in early childhood, we like the natural consequences, but for a child with a brain disability or disorder, those natural consequences, those links in the brain, those brain connections don't have that understanding. So we want to build resilience in early childhood through relationships, emotional literacy, providing positive experiences, providing those beautiful, caring, loving, responsive relationships, and that beautiful environment. And so our children might be with us from like 0 to 5 or maybe 6 months, but really we want to provide those solid relationships that say, little guy, I care about you. I'm going to respond to your needs because you are a gift from the Creator. Okay. And lastly, brains towards positive outcomes. So attunement, bonding, and attachment. And that is it. I'm going to have a sip of my tea now.
And while you're having a sip of the tea, there have been lots of comments of thank you. This is wonderful. The idea from New Zealand is great to share with communities. Grateful for the valuable information. There's always learning. Loving that you make the point of natural consequences. Often work with teens with FASD and have heard natural consequences is how they're going to learn their lesson. Inspiring words, thank you. Wish we had more time. And I agree, I wish we had more time. I had promised it would be 1 hour. That's it. But I sense there's a lot of interest in learning more. So hopefully, April, May, June may be able to provide, go a little bit more in depth. But there's one question here. What is your idea on changing classroom posters once a year, even just the placement?
Like posters? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, like posters, you know how classrooms have posters, and I worked in social emotional learning classroom, and we would change the posters like once a year, even just the placement, because the kids get so used to it to after a while they don't look at it, like on classroom routine and make sure you wash your hands and this and that. And I noticed that even just changing the placement of the same posters kind of awoke in them and made them realize, oh yeah, I forgot that I quit doing this, because they got so used to it that they would just walk by it.
Right. Yeah, I would do that as well. But what I would do as well as posters is use the children's pictures. So I might have little Kezia washing her hands, or little Marlene setting the table, or little Joanne getting her coat on. So I would always make my posters reflective of the children and the community. And that when you make something more personalized, it's more, it resonates more with the children. So I'm always about reflecting the children, families, and community within your environment.
Yeah, following the same line as a social story. Yeah, we did that as well,
Yes.
doing like different routines in the classroom. But I noticed that even just moving the posters, they realized, oh, I'm not over here anymore, I'm over here.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so that's not such a bad thing. It's okay to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a high quality practice, Melissa. Thanks for bringing that up.
And comment, that was an awesome question. Was wondering about that too. So that was good. So we have drawn to 2:30. I wish to thank you, Lily, so much for sharing time with us today and introducing us to how to adapt early childhood environments. I know it does go so much deeper than that. So I'm hoping when I send out the evaluations to everyone today, perhaps you could, in the comments section, even just let us know what areas you might wish to learn a little bit more about, and then perhaps we can put together some sessions for early childhood, 0 to 5, although other people are welcome to join us, where we can just delve more deeply into some of those other questions. Thank you, folks, for joining us. Once again, Lily, thank you so much, and good day, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and it was my pleasure, and hope you're all staying safe out there in Saskatchewan. Thank you.